Our PLTW distance learning support is a full suite of resources created by PLTW that schools can utilize to enhance their distinct distance learning needs. Support for both educators and caregivers will be available through different platforms like online learning guides, embedded distance learning guidance, webinars, and more. These new resources equip teachers and caregivers with the flexibility, confidence, knowledge, and skills to facilitate learning that empowers students wherever learning takes place. Now today we're going to dig into the embedded course enhancements for distance learning, as well as additional support, including where to access embedded curriculum enhancements, virtual events, teacher guidance, and PLTW online learning guides. Right now we want to turn it over to Jason Roush, our PLTW Vice President of High School Programs, to introduce the distance learning support embedded into courses. And after that, we're going to run through our PLTW specific groups and get more hands-on into my PLTW. And I know Claire said in the very beginning that we were planning on going into breakout rooms. We are working through a few technical difficulties right now for our breakout rooms, but rest assured that we will run through all of those specific groups, and we may do it in a group format. And so with that, Jason, I will hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Brandy. So we are calling an audible here. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
We can.
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Brandy. So as Project Lead the Way continues to examine opening day policies emerging in education, it's clear we're facing challenges that require a multifaceted approach. Some of you will begin your year fully online, some of you will be in your classrooms, and some of you will be applying blended approaches. Together, Project Lead the Way, with best organizational thinking and working with our master teachers and teachers in network, as well as experts in distance learning, have developed support that will help you make key decisions on teaching and learning wherever it is happening. So I'm going to be going through some of the curricular enhancements related to high school and Gateway in partnership with Rachel Allard, who represents our Gateway team, and myself in high school. And then I'm going to hand that off to our launch folks, led by Ginger Teague, who's going to give you some high-level overviews and some enhancements related to launch. So with that, I'm going to jump into, and we're going to fly through the high school enhancements. So as I said, Rachel and I put this together to really highlight both Gateway and high school, whether it's modules or courses. You're going to see the same type of navigation in both places. So let's jump right in. So here we see the landing page for Introduction to Engineering Design. So our high school students would typically see these 4 units at the bottom, but here we now have 3 new buttons: Getting Started, Distance Learning Opportunities, and Skills for Success. So as a student, I'm going to jump right in, and I'm immediately going to get some guidance on the structure and architecture of the course and how my teacher is going to help me progress through the year. So one of the first things that we've done as a curricular team is to add 4 different categories of activities, projects, and problems. Our category 1, or green activities, projects, and problems, can be completed as is, so you're not going to really see any changes in those pages. Our category 2, or blue activities, you're going to find guidance both for at distance and in classroom within the same space. Our category 3, or orange projects and problems, these are going to be new activities that we've developed specifically to be taught at distance. They're intended to replace our category 4 problems and projects and activities that really need to be done in the classroom. So we really designed these category 3 activities, projects, and problems to address all the same learning objectives, knowledge, and skills that they would be missing if they're not in the classroom space. Students will also get guidance on distance learning supports. We really intended to put teachers at the center or the touch point for this experience in guiding students. Here you'll see a distance learning support check with teacher call out. This is where teachers can provide guidance on how to manage equipment, supplies, collaboration, or any software needs. So now we're going to go ahead and jump back to the original landing page, and I'm going to jump into Skills for Success. So Skills for Success represent a lot of guidance for folks to answer questions, whether it's a caregiver, whether it's a student, whether it's a teacher. How am I going to go through this experience in 2020-21, answering these questions. We've got some guidance, like for instance, I don't think I was successful with distance learning last year. How will this be any different? And I know our expert, Catherine Kennedy, is going to talk a little bit more about that. But we provide guidance and support for folks on this page, teaching at distance. Finally, coming back, the last thing I want to touch on here on the student side are quests. Quests are designed to provide teachers with flexibility. They're modular distance learning opportunities located in student courses that build skills and assist with distance learning planning. Teachers can pivot to these as needed if students are transitioning to or from the classroom at distance. So I'm going to jump in and show you kind of an example of each one of these quests. We have a baseline of about 3 or 4 of these quests in each, and look to build more of these throughout the year. So career quests. In career quests, you'll hear from professionals in a variety of fields and reflect on future plans. Each quest includes a reflection question and is a great opportunity to spark conversations about careers in engineering, computer science, and biomedical sciences. Ethics quests. Ethics quests walk you through ethical decision-making processes and ask you to work through several tough ethical scenarios. So we have an interactive chart that really guides you through this ethical decision-making process, describing what it is and what the steps entail. And then at the bottom, you see that we've populated with 3 initial quests, one being very topical around COVID-19 and the pandemic. Again, we look to populate more of these throughout the year. Finally, discovery quests. Discovery quests provide a variety of learning opportunities to help you develop skills, including collaboration, using the design process, and online safety. So many of these are very timely. Many of these deal with things that are going on in our world right now. And in particular, we included one around metacognition because we know self-reliance and intrinsic motivation are going to be critical for students' success. So we're really excited about these. We do think it's going to provide a lot of flexibility for teachers to integrate these throughout the year whenever they are needed. So with that, I want to jump over to the student side and show you some of the enhancements that are built in. So here we see the landing page for Introduction to Engineering Design, and the first thing you'll notice is the distance learning support callout at the top of the page. So you have all the traditional resources to begin your year, but by clicking on the distance learning support, you're going to jump to the same descriptions that your students were provided, mapping out or describing what the activities and projects and problems are and how they're enhanced. But you'll also get some additional guidance on the quests that we just discussed. And then at the bottom of the page, you can jump into course-specific guidance that we'll be providing through distance learning facilitation support. In this document, you will find a number of great assets to kick off your school year. One being a caregiver support letter. This caregiver support letter can be tailored for your class and really provide guidance for those who are taking care of students or supporting student learning wherever it's at. It's also tied to our PLTW guide for online learning for caregivers that Catherine Kennedy will talk about a little more in a bit. It also provides pathway-specific needs around software, a key one in high school being Chromebook support. We do recognize that Chromebooks will be a key strategy for many teaching at distance. So we've taken great effort to ensure that there is a Chromebook path for each of our courses, pre-K through 12, for all students, should they be working through Chromebooks at distance. So for instance, in Introduction to Engineering Design, we've provided an Onshape path, a different software than our Fusion 360 that will provide students the opportunity to learn at distance. Teachers will also get guidance on equipment and materials and how to disperse those if desired, as well as, I think the biggest highlight for me, the distance learning paths. Distance learning paths are your roadmap to distance learning success and will help you navigate wherever learning is happening. I liken them to a subway line, right? If I'm teaching at distance, I'm going to take the red line. If I'm teaching in a class, I'm going to take the blue line. And it really highlights where we've differentiated an activity, project, or problem to be taught at distance as opposed to the ones that would be needed to teach or be taught in class. Again, making sure that these new flexible alternative activities address all the learning objectives, knowledge, and skills, and allow students to progress through their learning progression.
Yeah.
So here we see the learning path map for Unit 1, and then Unit 2, and 3, and 4. So very quickly, I'm going to fly through a couple of examples on explicit or specific enhancements that we baked in. I have some limited time. I want to make sure I get to launch and give Ginger an opportunity to share the highlights there. But here's an example of some of the things our instructional designers have built in if you're teaching at distance. So as a student, if I'm working through activity 121, an introduction to engineering design, I notice this is a blue activity. So if I'm in class, I can progress through this, no problem. If I have to do it virtually, I know there's going to be specific guidance baked in for me, and here it is. I've got a call out. So in this activity, students are learning the sketch. They're learning to make decisions about what's the best profile to make an isometric sketch. Typically in a classroom, we would hand out blocks to students. They'd examine these blocks, and they would pick what's the best front face. But if you don't have physical blocks, what we've done is provided you with virtual blocks. These are embedded within the page that can be manipulated so that it can spark conversations around what's the best front face, and how's the best, or what is the best strategy for me to sketch this. In computer science, a chief challenge that we faced again was Chromebook support. So in an effort to support students who don't have capacity to install Microsoft Visual Studio Code in a Mac or a PC, we've really leveraged the interactive nature of Trinkets, or the embedded code editor. So Trinkets are an in-page editing system new to our courses this year that lets students see code on the left side, and by hitting a run button, they can actually see the execution of the code in a window. So in this activity, students are learning Python by using turtles to draw pictures of flowers. So when they get to bigger and bigger programming challenges, we really want to switch them to a more authentic development environment in the Visual Studio Code. But if they are working in a Chromebook, our designers have created a student development environment that we're calling a space to code. What this allows students to do is, if they're working on a Chromebook, they actually have a Trinket approach where they can do the same things. We provide guidance on how they can manage their files and so forth. Finally, one last update that I wanted to share with you that we're really excited about in biomedical sciences. We've embedded, excuse me, I want to jump to it real quick. So here we go. So what you're seeing on your page are interactive three-dimensional modules that allow students to explore things that they can't see in the absence of a wet lab. You'll see these interactive three-dimensional models in all of our courses, and it will really bring the courses to life and help teach at distance in the absence of a wet lab or physical models. So thanks. That concludes our quick, really brief fly-through of high school. With that, I will turn it over to Ginger Teague, and she's going to share with you some of the enhancements for launch.
Thank you, Jason. And I'm going to change and let me share my screen if that's okay. Okay, thank you. We'll do a quick view of launch, and there's so many things we're excited to share with you about the distance learning support for PLTW launch. And one thing is that there are new chapters in each module.
She can kind of show you where that is. We also wanted to reiterate, thank you for the patience as we audible. I did want to remind everyone that our launch is unique, and that's why we had one section on launch and one section on high school. Our high school and our gateway approaches are very similar, so challenge. We made some pivots in the spring to get more students able to get into courses. But watch for more information to come. Finally, the last thing I would share with you is stay connected with the network, your community. We've provided a number of updates that are integrated into community with tiles and file management and helping you find things and share things a little more easily. So if time permits, we can go look at that later. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather Baker. Heather is our Senior Director, who's going to show us additional resources to supplement distance learning experience. Heather?
Thank you, Jason. And just a reminder, you guys are having some great questions in the chat. Make sure to put those questions directly to Claire so that she can get those answered. So Project Lead the Way's distance learning support includes additional resources to support educators, students, and caregivers through pltw.org. In addition to all the course-embedded enhancements that you just heard about, Project Lead the Way is committed to supporting all stakeholders in a way that meets their needs. One of these ways is to offer online opportunities to engage with PLTW team members and master teachers to learn more about effective online instruction via webinars, educator forums, pre-recorded how-to videos, and office hours with our directors of school engagement. Project Lead the Way has created how-to videos that will walk through many common activities within MyPLTW. The videos will be released in waves, with subsequent videos being posted through the beginning of September. The first wave of videos are available now on pltw.org, with more coming soon. And you can access them by navigating to the pltw.org website and select Learn More in the header image. You will be directed to PLTW's distance learning microsite. And from here, you will select resources from the menu. And when you're on the resources site, you want to select How To Resources and select Learn More. You will now see a number of how-to videos populate. Simply select the video you wish to watch and check back often so you can see the library of videos grow. PLTW is also facilitating distance learning webinars to provide just-in-time online professional learning focused on content implementation, distance learning best practices, tips, and tools. As you can see, we have 2 webinars that are scheduled for August. Registration for these webinars will also be available on pltw.org, as well as recordings and resources from past webinars, including the one today. To learn more about upcoming webinars and future topics, start at the PLTW's Distance Learning Support microsite and select Resources, just as you did before for the pre-recorded videos. Scroll to the Upcoming Events and select Learn More. This page will allow you to review information about upcoming webinars. A registration button will populate when registration is available and open. Please note, Project Lead the Way is dedicated to providing webinars that emulate our curriculum. To be able to keep activity-based content available, some webinars will have a reduced capacity limit. Recording for all webinars, presentation slides, and any additional resources will be available within 1 week of the live webinar on pltw.org. PLTW is also creating a space where educators can come through our educator forum, share stories and best practices related to distance learning. See, our first forum will be on September 1st. To learn more about upcoming educator forums and how to submit topics, go to the Distance Learning microsite. From Resources, select More in the Upcoming Events section. Once you're here, you can scroll to Educator Forums and review the information about upcoming opportunities to connect. A registration button will populate when the registration is open. Similar to our webinars, those forums will have a capacity limit to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to connect and share. And recordings for all educator forums and any additional resources will be available within a week of the forum on pltw.org. For PLTW schools, our directors of school engagement are also offering office hours periodically. These meetings are region-specific and focused to discuss pressing topics and issues around program implementation with program coordinators, site coordinators, teachers, and administrators. If you're interested in attending one of those meetings, we will have a form on our website that you can fill out to connect with your local director of school engagement and learn about upcoming virtual meetings that you can attend. For the last support resources, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Catherine Kennedy. Catherine is supporting Project Lead the Way as our online learning researcher and consultant. She has over 15 years experience in online, blended, and digital learning in pre-K through 12, higher education, and beyond. She's brought her research, practice, and policy experience to Project Lead the Way, collaborating with us to build Project Lead the Way's distance learning supports. Catherine?
Thank you so much, Heather, and hello, everyone. I'm so very grateful and honored to be working with the PLTW team on this important endeavor, and as you can see, a lot of work has been put into it by everyone on the team. From what we know from many years of research and practice, online learning takes so much intentional planning, and most of what we experienced as educators, caregivers, and students in the spring was not true online learning. It was emergency or crisis remote learning. No one was prepared for it, and we all did the best that we could with what we had. And only those schools and districts that were already truly doing online and blended learning were likely able to adapt somewhat to what was happening. But even then, everyone was running into decision-making processes that they were just not really prepared to tackle. When implemented with research-based best practices, online learning should have human elements of relationship building, collaboration, interaction, community building, supports, teacher presence, meaningful learning, well-being, and continuous communication. As we say goodbye to summer and hello to fall, the hope is that there is some intentional planning happening toward the potential that true online learning can provide. Based on these best practices, PLTW has brought many minds together to develop 8 guides, each of which focuses on guidance for key stakeholders who help support students as they learn. The guides provide information about PLTW's distance learning support, which you've just heard a lot about from my wonderful PLTW colleagues, as well as guidance on creating a supportive online and blended learning experience. Each of the 8 guides focuses on a specific audience. The first 2 focus on program coordinators, site coordinators, and other administrators, as well as other educators. For the other 6, we've broken those into into separate guides per the grade bands of pre-K through 5 and 6 through 12. And those are for teachers, caregivers, and students. For the program coordinators, site coordinators, and administrators, that guide offers resources for planning for and continuously evaluating digital learning efforts, standards for ensuring quality implementation of online and blended learning, and ideas for supporting all of the stakeholders that are involved. For other educators, which can include mentors, educational technologists, school librarians, special education teachers, ELL teachers, school counselors, and others, that guide provides guidance on topics like academic integrity, data privacy, digital citizenship, accessibility, and more. For teachers, these guides offer best practices for creating your physical and online space for efficient and healthy work-life balance, as well as engaging and motivating students, providing feedback, and adding the human elements to the online learning environment, all of which are topics that we will be covering in upcoming webinars. For students and caregivers, these guides provide information for how to support students and how to set up online and physical learning environments. The guides are available now on the resources page of pltw.org, as well as embedded in the curriculum on MyPLTW. All of these guides are grounded in research-based best practices and will provide the PLTW network with the knowledge needed for a meaningful distance learning experience. And now back to you, Claire, for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm actually going to pass it to Rachel to give a quick gateway overview before we move to the Q&A portion. Rachel?
Thank you so much. I'm just going to try to grab the screen share so I can show some gateway examples. So while I'm waiting on that, I'm just going to state that, as was already mentioned by Jason, our gateway program distance learning enhancements will look very similar to the high school program's distance learning enhancements. All right. Can everybody see the design and modeling screen? Okay, great. So just like Jason had noted with the high school programs, you will see some similar things. So we also in the Gateway program have the Getting Started Distance Learning Opportunity Quests and Skills for Success page. One additional feature I wanted to point out that's available in both the high school and Gateway programs is that we've also added additional student-facing support for using courses features. And one exciting thing that I would like to point out within that is that Courses does have a print feature, which allows students to capture a page that they'd like to save and save it as a PDF. That also includes any text that students have entered into any text boxes within Courses. So if you want your students to be able to submit some of their answers that are within Courses to you, they can use that print icon and then submit that PDF to you. That's a question we often get. Just like Jason mentioned, all of the Gateway units are Chromebook compatible. We've provided some student-facing support on utilizing Chromebooks during their distance learning adventures that kind of will help them be successful. One thing to note that if for distance learning for app creators, if you want students to be able to test the apps that they've developed on their own devices, they will need Android-enabled Chromebooks with access to the Google Play Store. I won't go through all the quests and all those things since Jason already did, but I'll just share a couple of examples from design and modeling so you can see that it looks very similar to the high school. It's the same 4 categories for distance learning. The category 1, which means the activity, project, or problem can be done whether you are in a distance learning situation or in the classroom. Category 2 means be on the lookout for some embedded distance learning support embedded within the activity, project, or problem. And then our category 3 means that an alternate version is available. So in design and modeling, we'll start with activity 1.1 because that's where students will start. And they can see this call out. They are directed to jump to the distance learning version of this activity. All of the navigation within those callouts will help students navigate fluently between the in-class version and the alternate version. So they don't have to say, where am I supposed to go? What do I need to click on? And then the alternate versions, some alternate versions are entirely new activities that are designed to take the same knowledge and skills for the in-class version, but make it appropriate without access to some of the materials or different software. Or in some cases, such as in activity 1.1, there's a lot of more subtle changes in the alternate activity. So for those who are doing this activity in person, they will have a very similar experience, but there's been minor tweaks and adjustments throughout the activity so that some of the nuances of doing it in person and virtually won't be noticed by the students, so that those students doing it at a distance can have a very cohesive learning experience. So for example, if they are in the classroom, they learn about decision matrix, they do the same thing at a distance, and students have created ankle-foot orthoses prototypes in a classroom. They would compare their prototype with those of their peers. That's a little harder to manage for teachers at a distance. So examples for students to compare to are provided right within the activity. I will also share an example of a category 2, which means that students should be on the lookout for the distance learning call out. So in this activity, students create paper skimmers that they launch across the floor. The in-class version has teachers create a launcher that utilizes a nail, and they create this launching pad for students. We didn't feel that was super appropriate to send home with students, would be harder for teachers to manage. So we've created a more appropriate version for students at home that the skimmer doesn't travel as far, so that's more appropriate in smaller condensed spaces and also doesn't require a nail. I'm going to switch over to the teacher side. The teacher side for Gateway is also very similar to high school. There is a distance learning support chapter embedded within the teacher guide that has the welcome page that Jason showed, has a unit level facilitation support page that also includes that caregiver letter for teachers to be able to modify and send to caregivers. It includes lesson level facilitation information for every activity, project, or problem that needs distance learning enhancements. And then also includes a resources page. This resource page includes some of those online learning guides that Catherine just shared with you all. And it also includes some resources with specific distance learning strategies that you can use with your students. So if you're teaching app creators or computer science for innovators and makers, and you want to figure out how the heck do I do pair programming at a distance, we've got you covered, and we've provided some resources. One additional thing I did want to point out is that our distance learning paths, we have the same diagram that Jason showed for high school. In some cases, the distance learning paths might be individual activities, projects, or problems, but in a unit like automation and robotics that utilizes the VEX Gateway Kit for both lessons 2 and lessons 3, there are actually an entire lesson distance learning path. So we will be releasing an entire sequence of activities and projects for students to be able to still attain those knowledge and skills without utilizing the VEX Gateway Kits, and also for programming, since Robot C will only run with a Windows computer. We are using VEX Code VR for Chromebook compatibility. So I just did a quick fly through, and I'm actually now going to turn it back to Claire for the question and answer.
Thank you, Rachel. This concludes the demonstration and navigation of PLTW's distance learning support. You all have asked some great questions, and our team has started answering them in the FAQ document, which will be made available tomorrow via email for participants to access. Before we begin our Q&A portion of the webinar, please tell us in the chat what you are most interested in learning about during an upcoming webinar. I'll give you guys just a few seconds to add that to the chat.